going to look at some WAEC questions, some type of questions WAEC will definitely want to ask you. Okay, so without wasting our time, once again, as usual, I am Louis Washington. Welcome to class. Let's start. So, we have 3 questions here. Biology questions. The first one is asking you to do what? Define the term population. Alright, while the second one is asking us to do what? List 2 biotic and 2 abiotic factors each. That means you list 2 biotic factors, then we list 2 abiotic factors that affect population growth. Alright, the last question is asking us, what are those effects food shortage will have on a population? What are the effects food shortage will have on a population? Alright, let's start. Let's take the first one. Alright, so let me move this way so I can write here. If you can't see properly, you can pause the video when I'm done. Alright, then you play it again all over. This is the first question. Define the term population. Alright, so let's define population. Population can simply be defined as the total number of living organisms of the same species living in a particular environment. Again, population can be defined as the total number of the same species living in the same environment. Alright, what do you mean by that statement? For example, this is a classroom. Alright, so in this classroom we have mosquitoes, we have cockroaches, we have ants, spiders, and so on. Alright, so if I'm asked to determine the population of cockroaches alone, that is what we mean by what? Population. If I'm looking for the total number of spiders in this class, that is what? The population of what? Spiders. So, population, again, in case you are asked in WAEC, define population. Population can be defined as the number, you can say the total number of organisms of the same species living in a particular environment. Full stop. Alright. So let's look at question number 2. Question number 1, we have defined population. So let's look at question number 2. Factors. Biotic factors. So let's call this 2B. Abiotic factors. Alright, so let's look at what do you mean by biotic factors and abiotic factors before we start giving examples. Alright, so that we understand what we are listing. When we say biotic factors, these are the factors, the living factors that affect the population of a particular environment. The living factors, that means the living organisms in that environment that affects the population of organisms in that environment. So, that's what we mean by what? Biotic factors. Abiotic factors, these are what? The non-living components in that environment that will affect the population of living organisms in that environment. Alright, now let's list the biotic factors first. Alright, under the biotic factors, This is divided into 1. Producers. 2. Consumers. 3. Decomposers. Alright, the biotic components or factors that will affect a population is divided into 3. Producers, consumers, and decomposers. What are producers? They are what? Autotrophs. Producers are also called what? Autotrophs. These are organisms, as we all know, plants, that can manufacture their own food through a process called what? Photosynthesis. These are living organisms. Living organisms. Plants that have the ability to produce their own food. So, any organism that has the ability to produce its own food is called a producer or an autotroph. Producer or an autotroph. Alright, these producers now are further divided into 2. So, producers divided into 2. First one, I said you can call them producers or autotrophs. 1. Photosynthetic autotrophs. I hope you can see that's okay. The other one is chemosynthetic autotrophs. The first one is photosynthetic autotroph. The second one is chemosynthetic autotroph. What do you mean by photosynthetic autotroph? Please, we are still discussing biotic factor. Under the biotic factor, we said it is divided into 3. Producers or autotrophs, consumers, and decomposers. Now the producers or autotroph, we have photosynthetic autotroph, we also have chemosynthetic autotroph. These photosynthetic autotrophs are organisms, for example, green plants that contain what? Chlorophyll. They use energy in sunlight to produce what? Their own food. That's why they are called what? Photosynthetic autotrophs. Okay, that's what they are called, photosynthetic autotrophs. Chemosynthetic autotroph, these ones, they are also producers, but they don't depend on sunlight to produce their own food. They use the energy in chemicals to manufacture their own food. An example is Rhizobium leguminosarium. Again, Rhizobium leguminosarium, present in the root nodules of leguminous plants. Example of leguminous plants is your beans. So, Rhizobium leguminosarium is an example of a chemosynthetic autotroph. Alright. Mango tree is an example of photosynthetic autotroph. These two are known as what? Producers or what? Autotrophs. These two are known as what? Producers or autotrophs. So, consumers. We have the primary consumers, secondary consumers, and tertiary consumers. Okay? So, the primary consumers now, why are they called primary consumers? They are called primary consumers because they feed directly on the producers. They eat the plants directly. Alright. So, those ones that feed on from the producers directly are called the primary consumers. In brackets, the herbivorous plants or herbivores. Herbivorous plants. So under, there's no space here. So under primary consumers, I don't know if you can see. So primary consumers, they feed directly on the producers. Alright, secondary consumers now. These ones feed on the primary consumers. Example, your lion. The lion will catch a goat and feed on the goat. The goat is a primary consumer, while the lion is what? A secondary consumer. The nutrients from the plants will enter the goat, while the nutrients will move from the goat into the lion. That is a secondary consumer. So a secondary consumer is also known as a carnivore or carnivorous animal. Alright. The third set, we have the tertiary consumer. This tertiary consumer can feed on both the producer, it can feed on the primary consumer, they can also feed on what? The secondary consumer. So they call this set of consumers, they call them omnivores or omnivorous organisms. Human beings are examples of what? Omnivores. We can eat plants, that is producer. We can eat goats, a herbivore or primary consumer. We can kill a lion, we can kill a dog and eat that dog. That dog is what? A secondary consumer. So that makes us what? Tertiary consumer, which is also known as what? Omnivores. Because of space, I'm not able to write some things down. So please, you can pause the video as I'm talking, as I'm defining some things. You pause the video and write them down. Then you continue playing the video. Alright, so decomposers, these ones help to break down the remains when the producers and the consumers die. It is the function or the duty of the decomposer to do what? Break them down and make them towards decay. They decay, the nutrients enters the soil, plants retake the nutrients to make their own food. The food is passed, the energy is passed towards the consumer and the cycle continues. So their function is to what? Break down the remains of dead organisms to produce what? Manure or fertilizer. Alright, so these are the biotic factors that can what? Affect a population. To list them, you can write one. Animals. For example, you can give that example of such animal. For example, you can say a lion. So these two factors, two biotic factors. You can say, for example, one, animals, e.g., lion. Two, decomposer, e.g., a bacterium. How does that animal, how does that lion affect the population? One, it can get the goats, kill the goats, and what? Eat it. Thereby what? Decreasing the population of that goat. Okay, decomposers. How do they? Some decomposers are dangerous when they get into the body. So they cause what? Health conditions, diseases. By so doing, they can kill the organisms and what? Decrease or reduce their population in that environment. Okay, so let's look at abiotic factors. Okay, so abiotic factors are the non-living factors in the environment. Examples: rainfall, temperature, relative humidity, the pH of the soil, edaphic factors, soil texture, soil structure, etc. Alright, so we'll be answer the first question and the second question. Define the term population, which we said population is defined as the total number of organisms of the same species living together in a particular environment. Okay. The factors that affect the population of a particular organism. We said we have how many factors? We have the biotic factors, which are the living factors, right? And abiotic factors, which are the non-living factors. Under the biotic factors, we said it is divided into how many? Into three. Producers, consumer, and decomposer. Under the consumers, we have the primary consumer that feed directly on the producer. We have the secondary, and we have the tertiary consumer. Then we have the third one, which is what? Decomposer. Now, abiotic factors, though these are what? The non-living factors in the environment that will affect the population of a particular species of organism in that environment. Alright, let's look at the last question and we are done for today. What are the effects of food shortages on a population? When you don't have enough food, what will that cause in a population? Alright, we all know if you don't eat well, what will happen? Malnutrition. That's one. One effect. You become malnourished. Two, the person might even die. So death. Three, you have cannibalism. When you look around, no other food source again. What's left? The next thing to do is what? You start feeding on organisms of your own kind. If you are a human being, no food, no plant, no anything to eat. You can only see a fellow human being like you and you are very hungry. The next thing to do is what? You look for ways that you start eating the next person beside you. That is called what?